my body is the machine that is going to drive me to the finish line, and therefore what I put in my body, the fuel that I allow to help me perform better, you know, my nutrition, my diet, my fluids, ultimately they're the ones that are part of my building blocks and tanks to get there. And it's a colossal amount of you know, things to unravel and unpick and to define. People don't, you know, they see you on TV, for example, at the start line, think, oh, you know, you just rocked up there. No, this is years in the making to get to even a championship, to get to the heats, the semi-final, final, and to get a medal. That doesn't happen overnight.
No.
You know, no athlete becomes a champion by accident. I really got the desire to be an athlete when I was very young. When I was probably about 6-7 years old, I had a race at school on the school playground that my big brother Lloyd organised, and he had a bet with a friend for £1, which was big money back then.
Yeah, it's big money.
And there was a girl at the school who was the fastest girl at the school that had never lost a race, and he was like, "Sis, all you have to do is, you know, just run this race. You know, I got money on this." I'm like, okay, bro, okay. So we come to the school playground, and the girl, her name was Julie. She was a very popular girl. She's a couple of years older than me, and we just got to the playing field, and I think the head teacher came out. It was that big a deal.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was like
pressure's on now. Too.
Yeah. So I just get to the start line. On your mark, set, go. And Lloyd was like, just run as fast as you can. So I just kept running. And suddenly I saw the finishing line, and I won. And it was the first time in my life that I'd actually had a competitive race and got the feeling of what it was like to like be a winner, to be a champion. And I was quite shy as a young girl and very not very confident as I am today. And I experienced bullying at school. And that was a bit of a negative chapter, but winning that race ultimately changed my landscape, and it gave me confidence to believe that I could do anything. And from that race, you know, I was inspired by my teacher to join the local athletics club a few years later, when I was about 10, 11, and I just did it for fun initially, didn't really take it seriously. And then when I was 13, I got a call to compete for the England team, and I was just a kid, you know, and I was like, ooh, pretty awesome. So I did my first international when I was 13, and I set a British record for the 300 meters at the time. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I get to go around the country, go around the world, and I'm just teenager, just literally. And that gave me the excitement. So I was like, you know, when I get older, maybe see where it takes me. And that journey kind of was ignited from that first taste of international competition, you know, being able to be part of a big team, wearing the GB England vest, and being part of this kind of craziness of like the pace.
Group.
Yeah, and it was quite a privilege to be in that esteemed company.
Absolutely.
And then when I was 15, I got a chance to be on the senior team. And at the time, Linford Christie was still on the team, Colin Jackson, Sally Gunnell. They were future Olympians, champions for 92 games. So the games hadn't come, and I thought, you know, this is like pretty awesome. I'm in the same kind of companies, these big shots that I look up to as my role models.
Absolutely.
And at that age still, I thought I'm still having fun, enjoying it. And then as I kind of realised that this is like something that I'm born to do. I've got natural skill, but I've got to nurture it as I get older. And you know, from just training through the years, won my first English schools championships, and I won my second, third, fourth, and fifth. And when I was 17, I got scouted by the Americans, and I had about 20 suitors that wanted to bring me aboard to the, you know, NCAA system. And
it's a great system.
Yeah,
It is.
I even had Harvard interested in me, and I couldn't decide. So one day, my mum and I and dad, we just got home and we just put all the names in a hat, and I picked the first one, and it was the University of Nebraska. And I'd never heard of like really where Nebraska was, but I knew it was right in the middle of America, and I knew they had lots of corn, and I also knew that they had lots of snow and it got damn cold.
Yeah.
However, they also had Merlene Ottey, one of the greatest female athletes of all time from Jamaica, who went there, and she was one of the most decorated athletes. So in my heart, I knew I can't go wrong if Merlene Ottey went there, and she's done all these amazing things and is like one of the most decorated Olympians of all time in any era. I can't go wrong. And I realised that I was a good athlete. I was very good, as a teenager. But I knew in America there were athletes that were a lot better, and I could only, ripen
numbers and stuff as well.
Yeah, and I had a bit of a tough time because people were like, oh, go to America, they'll burn you out, this, that, and the other. And people that had never even been on a plane before to America, never mind know how it works. And I just had to go on my instinct, and I thought, there's all these great schools. I remember there's California, Oklahoma, Harvard, so many schools, Southern California, and I was just like, I couldn't get to one.
Cal.
Yes, yeah, and Cal Poly,
Yeah.
and I had Iowa State. And the coaches came to the house to meet my family, and they really meant business. They spent a lot of time investing in me, talking on the phone, coming to visit us from the States. And in the end, I just had to go on my instinct. And even though it was quite spontaneous, I think going to Nebraska was probably one of the best decisions that I made in my life, because that gave me ultimately the pathway to what I would do in my career in terms of my academics and my sporting prowess in order for me to achieve my I guess ultimate personal best through the work ethic I had to develop, through the amazing coaches I had and the support team, everyone from psychologists to the nutritionists. You're all part of a big team, and no athlete can say that they did it by themselves. We all need our family, number one. We need our coaches, our fans, the officials, the people that make the events run. They're all part of the journey.
They're all part of the process, and I say this a lot on the platform to people who listen in, and even people that I'm close with, is the process and the people have to come together.
Yeah.
In order for anything to,
they all have to
really
marry
move
up,
forward.
they have to ultimately connect to create this cohesive environment where people can achieve their best.
Absolutely.
And I know for sure, I don't know what my life would be like if I'd stayed in the UK, but I know for me personally, going to America, I learned how to be a champion by being patient, by learning from the best, by observing the best practices, the best methodologies, and also being able to research myself, what works for my body, what works for my psychology.
The science behind it.
The science behind why do this training session? What is the point of doing, for example, 10 reps of 150 meters, or running up a hill, 20 times, or stadium stairs, or doing, plyometric work. There's so many things that the body goes through, even certain strength and conditioning sessions. You think, what is the point? But everything is helping you build strength, power, speed, to ultimately take sections of your time to be faster, quicker, sharper. And those small margins are priceless, those small wins that you make. And
Huge.
you have to take time to know that this is how you have to do it. And then once you've learned it, it becomes easier.
Yeah. I kind of look at athletics in a sense similar to how it's kind of a unique comparison. But when I say Formula One racing, because I've been following Formula One via IK, Lewis Hamilton for a little while, and just kind of seeing the nuance of the sport. But when I say that, I don't mean in the mechanics, I mean in the process and what you're working towards, the team elements, putting together different components for small percentages of differences. And you take that similar approach to athletics, you have to do all different types of training methods to even get a half a fraction of a percentage
and think
better.
Compare that idea that the human body is the machine in Formula One, which is tenfold harder. That my body is the machine that is going to drive me to the finish line, and therefore what I put in my body, the fuel that I allow to help me perform better, my nutrition, my diet, my fluids, ultimately they're the ones that are part of my building blocks and tanks to get there. And it's a colossal amount of things to unravel and unpick and to define. People don't, they see you on TV, for example, at the start line, think, they just rocked up there. No, this is years in the making to get to even a championship, to get to the heats, the semi-final, final, and to get a medal. That doesn't happen overnight. No athlete becomes a champion by accident.
No, yeah, that's very true. I think the amount of work that is required in order to facilitate, as I said, just that personal growth independently, let alone going and competing against people internationally and worldwide, that is highly commendable, and I think can be translated in terms of, I'm sure you definitely have done this, but teaching others out there how they can use simple elements in sport, basic fundamentals of training methodology, psychological evaluation, just basic analysis of who you are. You can help translate that and take that into whatever career path that you're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy that sport found me, or I found sport, because ultimately the things that I've learned through sport are priceless, and they're things that I can obviously pass on to my children, to the children that I've worked with in coaching and children that I teach, but also ultimately those are life skills that are with me for life. These are things that are, basic: how to organize yourself, how to manage your time, how to be dedicated, committed, how to be disciplined, how to stay motivated, how to set goals, because obviously as an athlete you're always setting goals every season. How do you recover from a setback? How do you pick yourself up when you've had a disappointment? And how do you work with a team? And all these elements are part of what we do in the real world. You have to have a hunger to achieve something. You have to have desire. You have to also have the ammunition within yourself to be able to find the fuel that you need to get to where you want to be. But you also have to have your own vision. And I think as an athlete, one thing that we all spend a lot of time is visualizing our technique of what we want to do in terms of our outcome. So I would train to know that I want to run 52 seconds, 51 seconds, and I would have to know how fast I need to get to 200 meters in order to achieve that time. So you've got to be quite good with your maths as well. But you also have to know what your body is going to feel like. So you have to go through that threshold of pain, essentially, in a training session to know if you can do this, say, for example, 3 times in a rep, once in a race is going to be achievable, because you know that everything and the adrenaline rush and the kind of roar of the crowd, all those elements are going to be, tenfold when you're in the zone. And therefore, ultimately, when you're competing, all those things that you've learned years and years, even from like that first race when I was a 7-8-year-old on the school playing field, I was just running for fun. But ultimately, I was running to get to my end destination, and that was to win. And any job you want to win, you want to get results. As a teacher now, I want to get results for my students. They need to pass their exams. They need to be able to have credentials, to have a record of achievement. And I think through sport, the things that I've learned from different teams I've been on in America, the British team, the NCAA teams, my team in Nebraska, various different teams that I've had, all my athletic colleagues, and they're like brothers and sisters for life, because we've all had that journey through the years. And kind of as our careers have transitioned, because I always say I've never stopped running. That's in my DNA. I haven't officially ever retired, and I do intend to race again. So watch this space.
I love that.
I'm not done with this game, because I think it's something that I want my kids to see. They never got to see me run, and at whatever level,
you want to pass that
and you want to inspire,
showcase,
and you want to see. My son, bless him, he saw me on a YouTube video once, and he was like, "Mummy, is that you?" And he was really scared for a minute, because he saw me next to him and he saw me on a big screen. I said, because Mummy's a champion. She runs like a cheetah. She's so fast.
That's amazing.
And I was like, that's your mum, son. And, he's naturally quite gifted already. He's almost 4.
Oh, is he going to get it in the genes?
Little man has definitely got that fast twitch. And it'll be nice for us to do a session together or just run. And, he gets upset if he doesn't always win sometimes.
Well, there you go.
Like,
It's instilled already.
So he's got that appetite to be a winner already. And I'm like, son, sometimes you just got to push harder and, don't be complacent. If you get beaten in a race by one of your friends at nursery, you got to pick yourself up and just keep going. So definitely through sport, all those transferable skills, that's why I think a lot of athletes have a lot to offer the world, because they've been at the very top of any ultimate thing, which is, if you look at the world population, how many people actually get to go to the Olympics or World Championships or European champs or to run for their country?
A small percentage of
a percentage. A minuscule amount of people around the globe. So to have that opportunity and to even be the fastest in your school, to be the fastest in your town, in your county, in your country, and then the world.
Oh my goodness!
I mean,
it's an
that's phenomenal.
Feat. Like it's not to be scoffed at.
No, and people can't underestimate that, the kind of rarity of that, to have like a British record or to have a world record. These are things that are very, very special achievements.
They should be shouted about.
Yeah,
they should be, draw a lot of confidence from that and be able to, like you said, the transferable skills are so vast. And I'm glad that you brought up the point about athletes having a lot to offer the world. This is something I've spoken about as well previously with some of my friends. My good friend Perry, he's a cinematographer, movie maker, and he used to do athletics back in the day as well. And both Arsenal fans, but we sit and talk because we have a certain different perspective of, sport and athletics, or just athletes in general. Because I come from the team-based camaraderie of football, and he's come from more of the track. But I understand the duality, and we talk often about the psychology of what athletes can do when they get into a particular field. Because unfortunately, I think what we do is we try to confine people to one field, one passion, one area. And if you are diverse and knowledgeable enough and you absorb enough information, I think that we can do multiple things if you attribute the right amount of patience, time, commitment, and all those other factors. So,
of course.
Kind of getting to what I'm, in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is that I second what you're saying in a sense of athletes having things to offer to the world, because they're really putting themselves in a physical space in order to find growth. Most people in the real world, let's be honest, they attribute knowledge and then pass along that knowledge. There's no need for necessarily a physical excellence for you to be successful in that. Maybe there's certain elements that you need to use your body, made to be in a good fitness, health situation. But in terms of athletes, they push themselves to that peak and then have to now go into the world. And diversify.
As an athlete, you're always performing. It's a performance. No matter what level you're at, you are on stage. And whatever event or race in your life that you're performing, you always have to give your best. Same if you're an actor on stage, you're performing to a crowd, and you have to show up and pick yourself up, and you got to deliver, and you got to rise up. Gun goes, you got to rock and roll. If you miss that gun, it's all over. And I think that my pathway, just to kind of continue your question from previously, is I studied broadcast journalism, and I did also literature as well. And I studied my master's in mass communications. And I've always been passionate about writing and storytelling, and also telling stories about real people and the human interest factor. And I always knew that when I was younger, I said I wanted to run and tell stories, and that kind of gave me that journalistic kind of profile. But when I graduated from university, one of my professors was like, Lesley, you'll be an awesome teacher one day, because you just love people, and you gravitate to helping people, and you have this kind of spirit. And he also said that I'd be great on TV and presenting, because of how he saw me as a student and how I kind of was able to look at a situation and I could just kind of see the big picture, and then I can edit it and make it into a simplified version and transfer that to somebody else so they can actually make meaning of that and interpret it for themselves. And it's all about selecting the right content and material to enhance your audience. And again, as a journalist, when I was training, again, you're performing, but you're performing in a different way than an athlete. But those same skills, that I want to get the best story, I want to get the best interview, I want to get the best picture if I'm doing like a moving image thing to support my story. And I think being competitive is great, but it's being competitive for the right reasons, because you want to, you've got to prove yourself. If I didn't run a certain time at a young age, nobody would take me seriously to think, oh, this is the next big thing or not. But you're only as good as your last performance. And if you don't have, for example, it's like when you're at school, you don't write a good essay, you get the E, you get the did not finish. But if you focus and you know in your heart that you've aced it, you're going to get the A star. So by default, you are a product of what you produce, and your outcome is based on what you've invested into that.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly, especially in terms of the importance of the education, and you've been able to translate those things onto now students, and you're teaching people, which I think is also a natural evolution of being an athlete, because you learn and acquire so many things by design. You need to learn these things in training to then implement them on a match day or a race day in your case.
And you have to have listening skills. You have to listen, because a coach can shout at you all day long or tell you something. If you can't actually implement those ideas and actually understand how do you get your knees up high, for example, as a runner? How do you physically learn to do a particular drill that's going to enhance your performance? how do you teach someone to write an essay, a thesis statement? You have to take time to unravel and unpick those same skills, and it is quite an art form.
Yeah. I'm glad you said you have to take the time, because I think what, unfortunately, a lot of the world does look for is elements of shortcuts in order to find things quickly. You know,
they want it now. They press the button.
They're like, give me it now, give me it now, give me it now. And it's a case of, that could potentially happen for you. You could get it now, but are you going to know what to do with it?
Exactly.
Are you going to know how to maintain it? Are you going to know how to maybe share that information with somebody else so that you can sustain it for the future? And I think a lot of people just want quick reactions.
I think anything in life, whatever job you're doing or career, you have to know your trade. You have to do your research. You have to have the knowledge. You can't just float through life without knowing and just pretending that you're kind of coasting by, because the cracks always show. And when you're under pressure, you will flop.
Absolutely.
Because you haven't...
When you get pressed.
Yeah.
And somebody kind of... for example, for the most time, we're usually agreeable. Most people, when they're out and they meet new people, they're very agreeable. And then you sometimes get those characters who don't care. But for the most part, we all just kind of want to get along. But when you have that individual, you're in an environment where somebody flips that on you and questions your intention, questions how willing, how committed, how disciplined you are. That is where you don't... Because if people aren't put in those positions or train themselves well enough, then what happens is they have negative reactions to that. And then, for example, if I say to you, are you really committed to what you're doing? Now, inside, if you have certain elements of lack of discipline, lack of trust, lack of all of these things, that reaction could turn you to kind of have like a flippant reaction and say, what are you talking about? I think, especially in our community, I've noticed through education, there's a fine line between the ones that are ready to absorb the info and then the others who would, who are just not, like you said, not willing to take that listening and use those listening skills.
I think it's important that everyone can impart knowledge on you in different stages of your life, and you have to be willing to take on board. It's like someone giving you advice, you can either take it or leave it. My dad used to always say, take it or leave it, and give amazing words of wisdom. And if you choose to ignore it, that's your choice. But if you choose to listen to it, and that person's got experience and it's like, I told you so, that was going to happen. But I also respect people who are confident to express themselves and have their own mind. But if you're stubborn and maybe ignorant, that's a whole different element of processing information, and therefore that can have its own consequences that will be quite negative.
So in your opinion, what ways could we, for young athletes, let's say, because I tend to work with a lot of young athletes, I'm working with some young kids, coaching them with football, what would some of your advices would be to some of those individuals who are looking to transfer their skills into different arenas now?
I mean, I think any young person, if you're still at school, you need to listen to your teachers, number one, because they're the experts. They're there to teach you math, science, English, PE, religious education, whatever it is. Take that knowledge on board and think, actually, you're going to use sections of this in your life. Who's going to use Pythagoras' theorem, or learn how to, measure a triangle? But if you're a builder or someone, you might need to do that. But most people may not use those explicit skills that you've learned at school. However, the fact that you've got that kind of big package of knowledge that you've collected through the years, you need to use that. So a young person, you have to have the very minimum, your grades. Your grades equal your achievement. Your achievement equals your success. So you leave school, this is what I've got. I've got, A, B, B, C, C, whatever. That's what you've got.
You add them up,
They're only numbers or letters now, So with that in mind, where can you take them to? Maybe college, maybe university. Maybe you're looking at schools and universities, but what are you going to study? What's the point of just doing psychology if you're not interested in that? Or doing farming, for example, or some random topic that you think, it looks good because there's a course on social media, how to get rich quick. And then it's like, nowadays, because everyone has access to this idea of people, I do a lot of work with young people myself, and I always meet young boys, they want to be football players, want to be professional football players. I always think about the talent that you have to be at the elite level. You just don't wake up one day.
You know this directly.
Yeah,
seeing this firsthand
because I've seen it directly, but I've also seen it with most sports, and being an elite athlete myself, I know for me to stand out as a young athlete, how much better I had to be. But when I got to America, I was just here. And I was quite awesome already, but I was suddenly here.
And you're like,
and I'm like, how did I get to here?
Hold on a second.
So you have to recognise where you rank yourself. When your peers, be realistic. So young people, you have to to set goals that are achievable. Have short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to change your mind and think, actually, no, I'm not really feeling business studies. You know, I don't know what I want to do with that. I don't even understand it. So why waste my time? Yeah. But naturally, I think everyone goes through an evolution as a young person to, like, for me, I was lucky. I knew I wanted to be a writer, a journalist, and I loved English at school. So I always put effort into that. Everyone thought I just loved PE, but I loved
yeah, they will.
Yeah,
I loved English as well, funny enough.
Yeah, and I loved reading stories, and I learned about how to put together a speech, how to write an article, how to understand language. You know, what's a simile? Why use that comparison? Why use this metaphor? Why use this image to make me think about, oh, yeah, I never thought about it this way. So I think that you have to go on your strengths. Not everyone's going to be academic. You know, some people are very good with their hands. They're more practical. They're more kinesthetic people. They need to move around. Yeah. And, you know, you have to find your niche. And that is through a bit of self-exploration. Write down what it is you want to do. You know, start mind mapping, you know, your strengths and areas of development. And then your weaknesses. Because those ones you want to work on. Yeah. You know, because you can be terrible at school with your writing, but by the time you get to a certain age, suddenly you know how to do a presentation, you know how to write a report, you know how to analyze data, you know. So I think young people today just have to really be honest with yourself, because we're all unique in our own way. We've all got different talents, different skills, different, ultimately, DNA in us that gives us strength and different powers, so to speak, and you have to maximize them. Yeah. And never be complacent. Just do what you think your parents want you to do, or to do what you think society wants you to do. Be free to be you, and be willing to take a risk. You know, if you have to travel to another country to learn what you want to do, go for it. If you have the opportunity, if you have to spend another year at university to do what you really want to do it. But don't rush. Patience is everything.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and I would like to add on to that just slightly by saying, for the individuals that can be kind of difficult to say, I don't know what I want to do. Those individuals, I've suggested sometimes in the past, process of elimination. So essentially having a map similar to the same way you have a map for the things that you're passionate about, have a map as well for the things that you're not passionate about. Yeah. Because I think a lot of the time we don't focus on those things, and then they do become options in different periods of our life, but we never considered them to be. And it's okay to say, I don't want to do that. That's completely fine. But I think knowing that, and saying
you're not going to be a doctor, you're not going to be a scientist, you're not going to be a pilot, you're not going to be an Olympic champion. You know, that's fine. And
astronaut.
Astronaut. That's the classic one. Yeah. But you can. Because the first man on the moon didn't know he was going to do that when he was a boy. You know?
Now you're speaking it almost like into existence, and whether or not you, like I said, whether or not you choose to say yes, that's what I want to do, or I don't want to do. I think understanding those things can help balance a lot of young individuals as well. Just adding on to kind of what you said.
Yeah, and it's imperative that you start as early as you can process that, you know, and you're not afraid to actually say, I'm not good at biology or science. In fact, I'm really terrible at this subject, but I'm not interested in it as well. Yeah. What you do in life, what I've always learned, that whatever your passion, if it's music, for example, if it's performing, if it's sport, if it's creative arts, whatever it is, you follow that, and somehow it will find you. You know, you get a lot of talented singers that have been singing from the womb, basically. You know, they're singing from the moment they come out into the world, and they know that they're at some point going to make it, or in the industry. You know, it might take years and years, might not even do it till they're 30, but they keep it in the kind of, you know, on the side until they have a breakthrough. But in the meantime, you have to also be realistic. So you have to find a career that will always provide stability and steady work, because ultimately everyone has to work in the world. You know, we all have to pay bills and responsibility and, you know, accountability. And you can't just live freely in the world.
No,
you know?
No, unfortunately not. As nice as that sounds, and as great as that utopian like lifestyle sounds,
it's not real.
It's not realistic, and it's not the most conducive environment for growth, especially for young people. Because when we're dealing with young people, structure, discipline, commitment, these principles need to be taught and trained. And I think if we had such a free society that just allowed whatever to happen, I think that, you know, we wouldn't have people understanding necessarily what they want to do or what they don't.
Yeah, it would be anarchy completely.
Yeah, it would be a lot of hot and cold scenarios of some people, I love this and I hate that. And I think what we need to have is more of a balanced patient approach to what we're building, what we're doing, you know. So
Yeah, definitely, 1,000%.
leading on, so transferable skills is fantastic. One other thing that I really would like to highlight is post-career in terms of the athletics. After you settled down into things like teaching, mentoring, all these other aspects, what was it like psychologically adjusting to those things?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I think ideally a lot of athletes, you know, they never want to admit that they're at the end of their career, or they kind of recognise that they've got injury, they've had a setback, they're getting older, which we all can't stop. No matter how young you might still look, or how old you might be getting, you still think you're what you were when you were 20.
Them bones are still aching.
And you know, a lot of federations of different sports, you know, I think they're doing a better job now to have some kind of pathway for retired athletes, whether it's football, athletics, rugby, whatever. Because if you don't help people who've always done one thing their whole life, and they never particularly took school very seriously or had much credentials, they're left hanging. And then they end up having very negative thoughts. They become depressed. They become psychologically unbalanced because, you know, take Paul Gascoigne, for example. You know, he's very publicly said about the moment football was taken from him, it's like life ended.
Literally.
It's like,
and I know loads
what
of
do you live and breathe for?
I know so many footballers
you
that
know,
literally just can't do anything else.
Luckily, in my case, I was part of the Dame Kelly Holmes Legacy Trust, and she did an amazing job after she retired to try and help other athletes kind of transition by creating opportunities for us. So that would be doing workshops to young people, mentoring, coaching, delivering sessions to primary school kids, to adults, you know, provide opportunities where we use our skills to go around the country, speak to young people, you know, do awards ceremonies, for example, all the way to actually doing a workshop that is very much focused on a particular aspect that we can use our skills specifically to impart to them. And also, I remember years ago, I worked with some refugee kids that came from Afghanistan, and they were part of this program, and they'd lost their family, they'd seen so much hardship, and they were barely 15 years old. And we did a workshop with them where they had to like do an assault course and do all these like work in different teams. No one knew each other, but the way in which everyone felt inspired that day and felt like they were somebody, and it was like winning the Olympics for them. Having that opportunity to be in this race. It wasn't a race to win a gold medal, but ultimately they were champions in their own form because they won what was important to them. And that was that they actually found out who they were through this experience from doing this, you know, amazing, you know, almost like a, you know, you go on a camp sometimes and you come out a different person because you've been able to switch off and almost refuel and think, actually, this is what my priorities are now. And now you're ready to go to the world and make a difference. And that's what I think a lot of athletes, you know, have that gift to do, even if they themselves didn't necessarily achieve their best at school. Those skills that you learn as a sportswoman or sportsman or sports person, you use that in every part of your life that you can share with other people. It's just storytelling. You know, one thing I learned over is storytelling. So I learned how to tell my story in different ways to different audiences. And just that alone can be enough to ignite someone and to change their life. Because they're like, she came from this town. She came from here. You know, she was just like me. And I see her or him in me. And therefore suddenly I think, well, she went to the same school as me. Why can't I do it? You know, it's nothing different. And I'm like, yeah, of course not. I lived in Ghana as a child. I couldn't even speak a word of English when I came to the UK. You know, and then suddenly I become the fastest girl in the country by the time I'm like, you know, 13. You know?
You're like, what?
It's like, what? I didn't even know I could even run. So my brother said, yeah, have a race. So all these things are not by accident necessarily, but through a chain of events that happen. But it can happen to anyone. Just by default, I chose to take it further. I could have just stopped at that school race in the playground and thought, whatever, you know, but I thought, oh, this is quite fun. But then once you have that desire to be someone, to do something, you know, I think everyone who's a good human being wants to help others, whether it's charity work, whether it's to give your time, whether it's just to spend time and speak to someone who needs your help, you know, and that's why I think when you retire from a sport, you know, I use the word retire loosely, when you can no longer physically do that sport, but you're still in that shell, that world, it's still in you.
Of course.
you know, I'm helping a neighbour of mine lose weight right now. And we go for a morning run, you know.
really?
She never knew that I was an athlete, but she thought she always looks quite fit.
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, I've done this. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, you never shared this with me. But to me, it's not a big deal. But obviously someone who hasn't heard that story would be like,
It's
wow.
like, wow, yeah.
You know?
Because you have the humility of not to go out and you're not bragging.
Yeah.
Boasting because,
And she was like, you know, is that you? I was like, it's my twin sister. She's like, I was just joking. But when you can help someone, and because of, you know, it doesn't matter how many years I've not done a race, it's still me. I can just come up and show up and get to that start line and I can still run, even if off no training. I had my son, I did a random race. People were like, why hadn't you just had a baby? And I'm like, yeah, don't discriminate a lady who had a baby, you know. And I just rocked up. Honestly, it was the most scary thing in my life, but I knew I could still do it, you know, and I did it as a little challenge for myself, you know, and I thought, I still got a little something.
Yeah.
You know, so age is relative. It's all about your mind and how you feel. And that's why I think people are only as good as what people define them as, because you ultimately shape your success. You define your destiny. That's what I've always said. You are the architecture of your, you know, your dreams
story,
and your life story. And every chapter is going to have a different, you know, story that you're going to have.
Yeah. So, rounding things off, I would love for you to, as you mentioned, chapters and books. What essentially chapter would you say that you're at now, and what are you currently working on, and what would you like to see happen in the next, you know, I don't know, next few years, months, whatever? This
has been quite a historical part of history, having lived through this pandemic, having experienced this lockdown. COVID-19 has changed everyone and has given us so many different things to reflect on, but also aspire to different goals and different things that we want to do. And I've always been the kind of person that I love a challenge and I need a goal. And I think being an athlete, like every season I had a goal to make this team or to run this time. And I'm at a stage now where I've got 2 young kids, and every day I wake up and I'm so thankful to God that He's given me this opportunity to mother these 2 wonderful kids. And this chapter of my life is to make them appreciate nature, appreciate sport, appreciate togetherness and the spirit of being able to play and to, you know, I love gardening, for example, so to grow vegetables, to do all these things. And that's really exciting. And I'm just actually in the process. I've been over the years writing like my life story. And I've pretty much done it, but I've had to stop in between and just have a break. And I'd like to try and finish that this year and kind of have my kind of, I don't know if it'd be autobiographical pretty much, but if there's any biographical elements I may have, but it's my story, you know, from childhood to now. And I'd love to be able to have published that, you know, and that's one of my goals. And then also my plan is to try and get on the track and have a race sometime in the near future.
That would be amazing.
And so all that, and I've got other projects that I'm slowly working on, and I'm thinking of doing something with my brother, collaboration, because I think we've got a lot of things we can offer the world.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So I'm trying to throw some.
To a degree, because you guys.
We need to collaborate. You know, even though it's in Australia, we can do anything. Anything's possible.
The world's so digital now, so connected.
Exactly.
People kind of would prefer things that way anyway, to a certain degree.
Yeah, so and it gives that kind of fluidity and spontaneity of it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this chapter is about just being happy, enjoying the moment, and appreciating life's simplicity, you know, with my family and with the people that are important to me, and just to continue to inspire others.
Well, I mean, it's been short, brief, but very, very meaningful for, you know, in terms of this little conversation that we've been able to have. I'd love to be able to sit down here for hours on end, but we're all busy people, and it was fantastic just to get you to come on and just relay some of those things, especially the storytelling, the transferable skills, the elements of how you've kind of utilized your story, your background in order to get to where you are today. Because I think the more we can see it and hear it coming from essentially the horse's mouth, we can gain from that. Like you said, somebody may be listening and watching and saying, "Oh, she's from where? Oh, I'm from there. Oh, I went to that school." And it's the associations, and I think that's one of the most powerful things in people, is that when you're around positive-minded people and you share that energy, sometimes it doesn't have to be said. It can sometimes just be by your actions.
Exactly.
And others can kind of pick up on it. So, you know, thank you so much for...
No, you're welcome. I just want to say, anyone can be a role model. Anyone can be ordinary, have extraordinary skills, talents that will help somebody else, to inspire them. And I think any young person that is doing something positive in the community, whether it's in Slough, whether it's in London, around the country, wherever you're travelling to, you're making those small steps make a difference, and you're changing people's lives. So being a role model starts from within you and from your environment that you're in, and you set that and you determine that.
Very true. I'm glad you added that in, especially because it comes from the inside, and sharing that outwardly after the fact, as opposed to trying to do it in reverse and gaining from other places. I think start from within, start from what you're passionate about, really hone in on that.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, if you do that, you tend to naturally want to share that information.
Yeah, sharing is caring. That's what I say to my kids.
Yeah.
And you have to, because once you've got something that's so wonderful, why not share?
100%.
Why not use that to help someone else? And I think that's what I'd like to leave as a kind of lasting message, that anything that is good, share it, because that will help people.
Absolutely.
And change their lives ultimately.
Yeah. Wow. Guys, I mean, you've been able to hear first-hand experience from not only an international acclaimed athlete, champion, in many different aspects of life. We're not just talking about athletics, we're talking about, being a mother, being a tutor, a mentor, a coach. There's various different aspects towards what you build. And for the athletes out there listening, don't ever think that you're confined to that one sport that you do. There's so many different skills that you can take with you into the real world, and can help you to be a well-rounded, holistic individual, whilst also, like you said, still challenging yourself.
Never limit yourself.
No, exactly.
Never limit yourself.
Exactly. So, very, very thankful. Where can people find you online if you are social?
Yeah, I am. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and
I'll put the little
just search my name and put my details. And I've also got a fan page, I think, on Facebook still. So feel free to drop me a line, say hi, what's up, and I always do my best to holler back at everyone.
Wicked. Well, Lesley, honestly, it's been fantastic.
You're very welcome.
And I would love to have you come back on, maybe closer to when the book is coming at the end of the year. It would be amazing, or even in between sometime.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, but until the next episode we're checking out, please go and check out this amazing woman. And if you don't know who she is, as I said before, you're going to know after this. And please do your homework. And most importantly, we're dealing with very tough times, and we're hopefully coming out of a serious pandemic which affects a lot of people. So even small things can be big gestures right now in terms of how you can help small businesses recovering, and people's mental health state, and all sorts of different things. So I always appreciate you guys for checking in and showing love, and thank you most and foremost for coming through and sharing your time.
Welcome. You're welcome anytime.
Absolutely. All right, so I'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace and love.